I can't hear you.
It's on.
All right. So yeah, thank you, Leslie, for the intro, because I do a lot of things. I suppose. All right, so I never thought I'd be standing up here about just speaking on the book of Revelation, but the calling was felt, and apparently that time is right now. So we'll see what happens. But I was sitting here a couple of weeks ago, looking around, thinking about the alpha course we were starting, as well as our place in this world, in this existence, and how imperfect and crazy, and yet how wonderful and creative and impactful, both good and bad, that humanity is. And I was wondering how it's all supposed to make sense, and then I see this, the Alpha and the Omega. And I said to myself, I know that's the beginning and the end of the Greek alphabet, and I know it's in the Bible somewhere, so let's go searching, and I found it. So I said to myself, or I said that already, this phrase occurs only 3 times in the Bible, and all of them are in the book of Revelation. And a lot of people avoid this book because, or they read it once and move on, without really thinking about it, because it's incredibly metaphorical and confusing and intimidating, and frankly daunting. It's the end of times, right? But as I was looking through for this topic, I couldn't help admiring the book's structure and intention. In a literary sense, it's quite brilliant in that way. So let's go ahead and dive in. All right, the first occurrence of this phrase happens in Revelation 1, verse 8. And it says, I am the Alpha and the Omega, says the Lord God, who is and who was and who is to come, the Almighty. Now that's pretty ominous and powerful, right? It's the past, present, and the future. But let's break it down a little bit more. Alpha is the first letter of the Greek alphabet, and this is in the first chapter of Revelation. And God is the one who says it, and that is the ultimate alpha, right? He's the first. And so I argue that this is the first guidepost for us to follow. What happened with that? I think we're back one. Go back one. There we go. All right, so, and the last occurrence of this phrase is in Revelation 22, verse 13, and it says, I am the Alpha and the Omega, the first and the last, the beginning and the end. And again, Omega is the last letter of the Greek alphabet, and this is the last chapter of Revelation. And guess who says this? It's Jesus. It's, for me, if this said that it was the final stand, what we should follow, it's the absolute and encompassing. And it points of Jesus as being one with the divine, at least in my minds. So putting these together, on one end, you've got Alpha, God, the first, the creator, the leader of everything. And on the other end, you've got Omega, Jesus, the one who will come last, the servant, the one who is selfless in service. These two are the bookends, set down as ideal examples of the world and for humanity. They're permanently fixed points, the guideposts that should keep us on track and hold us together. And that's really the goal, right? Trying to keep on track and hold ourselves together. But we as humans, we are not the Alpha and we are not the Omega. We're not here first, and we surely won't be here last. So these ideals might be what humanity strives toward, but we're always going to fall short, every single one of us. So where does that leave us? That is a big question, right? And it is a question, even many questions. We are found somewhere in the murky middle, and we are the question mark. And yes, it's a red question mark because of Alpha. But that actually makes sense. So as humans, we are this unknown, this wild card, especially because God has given us free will. And with that free will, all of us mess it up at some point in time. If you haven't yet messed it up, just wait, it's coming. I know I've messed it up. A few weeks ago, in our discussion after service, one of our members, Michelle, said something that I love so much that I wrote it down. And she said, God is eternal, I am finite. That's so true. And the Alpha and the Omega, those are constant, eternal, and unchanging. Then here we sit as this question, this potential, this unknown. And that is powerful in its own way. But we also have limitations of being finite. We exist in just one point in time at this very moment. So again, I ask, what does this mean for us? So from this question, I started thinking about what filled in that gap in the middle. The one that's so confusing and powerful and yet so finite. And my eyes fell on this. It's the cross. The cross is the physical. It's the recordable. It occurred. That was a very specific point in time when Jesus and God, the divine, intersected unmistakably with us, people, and said, okay, take two, follow this example. The cross simultaneously became that outward reach for the Alpha and Omega and the forever search for the connections between the divine and humanity. So again, what does that mean for everybody else? For all of us? And that got me thinking back to college and my involvement with a fraternity called Alpha Phi Omega. I'm going to turn this over and hopefully not screw it up. Okay. This is Alpha Phi Omega. Okay. I do admit I missed many classes that I intended to go to simply because I had to walk past the union where our offices were. The struggle was real. But this organization was a wonderful part of my college experience. For anyone who doesn't know, Alpha Phi Omega is a Boy Scout affiliated service fraternity. And yes, I said fraternity, not a sorority. I wasn't about to be caught dead in one of those. I know some people are into that, but not me. The fraternity was established in 1925 in Massachusetts, and it has spread across the country to many college campuses. At U of I, where I went, our chapter was the 25th established, and therefore it was named Alpha Alpha, because they started with Alpha, went through the Alpha, and started over. So again, Alpha is basically a key in my life. So when Alpha Phi Omega became co-ed in 1977, and I always joke that it was that way because that's the year I was born, and they were preparing for me. True story. So this organization is a brotherhood, it's a collective, it's a supportive community with common goals, and those goals are developing leaders, building community, and giving back to other people. And that's not unlike what we have here in Anyway. I've had this sweatshirt since the spring of 1997. Held up fairly long. And that's when I joined as a pledge in a pledge class named after Bill Crosby. We voted for that. Now that's preliminary judgment at this point in time, but that quite nicely echoes life, right? You can only work with the information you have at that point in time. And in 1997, Bill Crosby seemed like an outstanding dude that we all respected and remembered for Jello and Staxels and all that stuff. But anyway, all of the Greek letters in our organization stood for specific qualities of the organization. So Alpha is about leadership. Phi was about fellowship, and Omega was about service. We had a board of leadership positions, we partied hard a lot, and we did a lot of great community service of all kinds. If one of these aspects fell away, it didn't quite seem whole, and things tended to fall apart. I could argue that's true about life as well. So here we have the Alpha, the leadership in God. And we have the Omega, the servant in Jesus. From that frame of reference, it wasn't a far leap to consider us, all of humanity, as a fellowship. And the Holy Spirit is involved actively with us. In Acts 2, verse 18, it says, even on my servants, both men and women, I will pour out my spirit. The Holy Spirit is active with humanity. But here's another way to visualize it for my visual people. So you've got leadership up there, looking out on everybody, confident, sure, knows what they're doing, right? You've got service, which the head was supposed to be on the side, I got shifted in position, but it shows that the service is kind of bowing themselves down and servicing others. And then you have fellowship there in the middle with Phi, and there's two heads because it's all about community, and it kind of looks like they're giving each other a hug. Because Phi, fellowship, humanity, we are emotional, we are relational, we are imperfect, but we are a community as a church. We have a good time, definitely have a good time, we agree with that. We hug, we help, but we also mess things up. We always mess things up. But we can also try to find a balance between our humanity and following God and Jesus the best we can. Plus, I think we are stronger and better together. But how does Phi make its scriptural appearance in Revelation? Here's that question. And this just blew me away. So this 5 comes up in Revelation 21, verse 6. And it says, he said to me, I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. To the thirsty I will give water without cost from the spring of the water of life. And this, 5 is the 21st letter of the Greek alphabet. And it floored me when I looked it up. And this happens in the 21st chapter of Revelation. There's not 24 chapters, but this is the 21st. That was pleasantly surprising. And it's said by John, not that John, but John, and the human is quoting on the throne about people of humanity. So essentially, if we seek him for the thirsty, we get the grace of God, which is that water without cost from the spring of the water of life. I think that's amazingly beautiful. I was just floored when my research actually turned that up. So I'm like, phi is a great sense, makes great sense for standing for humanity, but what does that phi mean for us? So again, in Alpha Phi Omega, the organization, phi stood for the fellowship. But it wasn't always puppy dogs and rainbows and drinking beer and hanging out. Fun, but that's not all it was. Phi, fellowship could be a challenge. I was like the fellowship chair one semester, and yes, that meant I planned parties and brought everyone together socially, but it also meant I had to establish guidelines and rules to keep everybody safe. It was good times, but we made a lot of mistakes. Didn't make it, that was some rough nights, I gotta say. But ultimately, it was about getting together to celebrate, kind of like we do here at a church gathering. And that makes so much sense to me, seeing phi as a fellowship and humanity as that fellowship. But then I started wondering if there was more to this or if I was just making crap up. You don't know sometimes if you're just like wishfully thinking it all makes sense. So I looked to science for some answers, and boy did I get answers. Phi is a constant known as the golden ratio. It's 1.62803, blah, blah, blah. It's like pi where it just keeps on going and you can never stop the numbers. But it is being called the most beautiful number in the universe. It shows up in nature, geometry, physics, astronomy, the human body, art, architecture, and music. It's in the Fibonacci series, which was huge in that Dan Brown novel. We went into that. And Renaissance artists refer to it as the divine proportion. Again, this is God's. So, to give you some examples, you can see some pictures. In nature, the phi is in the DNA of organisms. It's in the sunflower's opposing spirals. It's the ratio between the leaf to its veins. It's in a nautilus shell. It's even in the skin folds of dinosaurs. In geometry, it's the math of spirals. It's in physics. In astronomy, it's the Kepler's triangle, which shows the ratio between the Earth, the Sun, and the Moon. It's the average mean orbital distances between each planet. It calculates the rings of Saturn. In the human body, and I couldn't list them all here, there was a ridiculous number of measurements regarding proportions in the human body that come out as this number. And as you can see up there, it's Da Vinci's Vitruvian Man. He kind of did all those measurements on that piece. There's a familiar painting up there, The Last Supper. All of it is geometrically, designed, of course, again by Da Vinci, to use this phi ratio. In architecture, it's in the Great Pyramids of Giza, it's in the Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris, it's in the Parthenon. And that white spiral up there, that shows you the Fibonacci series. And also in music, the most beautiful chords of music in existence use phi as the ratio. So with so much beauty, I can totally see why it's called the divine proportion. But it doesn't end there, crazy enough. In language is also at the root of phi. In English, we have the origin meaning for spelling, phi being the Greek letter that it is, contributes to some pretty awesome words. Phi gives us the common root phil, which means love. So we have words like philanthropy, the love of humanity, Philadelphia, brotherly love, and philosophy, the love of wisdom. So just like in science, phi is the perfection of love. So that's amazing, right? I was going to start dancing, because science and love coming together in perfect harmony in the phi. It's got to be a God thing, the universe, the world, and humanity, and everything in it are perfect, right? And yet, we're not perfect. Or at least we often feel like we're not perfect. and the omega, is the ideal or best case scenario for the universe and for humanity. As humans, we have the ability to figure out patterns and calculations and reasoning and so many things, and we have the ability to create and care and love without limits. Although we have the potential to be that perfection, we all fall short and inevitably muck it up somehow. It's the curse and the blessing of free will. This person grabs the power, property, or wealth. That person harms another. This person lies. That person shames or shuns and excludes. Humanity is its own worst enemy. And I picked the first song tonight, Whatever It Takes by Imagine Dragons, for this exact reason. The songwriter laments falling, tripping, making mistakes, being circled by people who are like vultures. Negativity, nepotism, fear of being less than, body image shame, wanting to be invisible, hypocrisy, egotism, being shoved to the side, not being taken seriously, and not being able to live up to expectations. He invites the world to break me down and build me up, because even in the struggle of life, in the chaos, in this imperfect world, there's hope. And there are actions we can take to do something about it. We truly can do something about it. And in the sky, in this life, we have the power and the choice to, quote, do what it takes. We can embrace that feeling of excitement or the adrenaline in our veins, which is life, and appreciate the feeling when you break the chains. That is freedom. And it's freedom for whatever holds you down or holds you back. It's different for everybody. The singer also sings about working on something to be proud of that's out of the box, to heal the world and the vision we've lost. For me, that's being here at a new way. We're working on something, a vision that's been lost and how Christ followers deal with the world, and I'm so proud to be part of it. The songwriter also calls himself a catastrophe and a masterpiece at the same time. I always feel like that. And he also calls himself an apostrophe, which is something that, is there, it's kind of hidden, but it needs to be finished. And in this sky, in this life, that is what we are. And as long as we're here, being unfinished is okay. We don't need to be perfect. We can develop and improve and work toward the better despite difficulties and damage that we've gone through. So take these two examples. So there is a rocket launching into space. If we can get, there we go. And I don't think to know science behind rocket science because I'm not a rocket scientist. But I do know all the working force and power that goes into breaking from our atmosphere into space. But before they break the atmosphere on the ground and after in space, it's so peaceful. Breaking through the difficulty, the barrier is a struggle, but the reward is amazing. Now, the second set of images, I have the benefit of getting videos of my kids when they turn from zygotes to embryos. So this is one of them, I can tell you. It may be funny. But even here on a biological level, the beginnings of life go from perfection in the top one in the middle, and it kind of goes around to the outside. It goes from perfection to chaos and back to perfection, so they can develop and become who they're meant to be. So many things in life illustrate this. The journey is difficult, it's chaos, it's hard, it's exhausting, but that's the point, here and now. We're in the in-between times, between the Alpha and the Omega. But honestly, I think that makes the vibe that much more beautiful. It's the struggle, the journey, the search for what's right and true. That's the good stuff. I'm so excited to be part of that. And without going through some kind of struggle, and again, that struggle is different for every single person, I'm not sure you can fully appreciate the good and the great. But that brings me to another point about the five, the fellowship, this in between. We struggle to figure out what is considered good and great and right. Growing up, I was often told that nothing is good or bad, but a comparison makes it so. I've thought about that a lot of the years, and I find it true. And furthermore, in very few things is there just one good and one bad. So many things are inevitably on a spectrum. But on that spectrum, can you really say what is the absolute best part and the most beautiful part? Is it at the extremes, or is it somewhere in the middle, or is it every part of the spectrum? I argue that beauty is everywhere. So let's start with the natural and scientific worlds. The land and the sea are both beautiful, but when they meet at the beach, that is beautiful, that is changed. It's constantly changing with all the tides and everything. It's just constantly in flux, and it's never the same place. In a valley to a mountain, the valley is beautiful, the mountain's beautiful, but does that mean the journey from one to the other is nothing? No. Every part of that gradient is beautiful. And every part of that thing is just what it should be. Now, if you take this one, night and day, if I told you this was all it was, would you believe me? Does it go, it's like a light switch, it goes on and off? Nope. What's missing? What is missing? Yeah, dawn and dusk, sunrise and sunset. So, this is neither night nor is it day, but it makes it all the more beautiful. It's my favorite time of the day, because it's always changing, it's hard to capture. When I actually capture what I'm filming, I'm like, yay, it's exciting, but then it's changed 2 seconds later. And I hadn't put this in, but that's my grandfather's favorite color. He called it sky blue pink. So if you see that kind of sky, I call it sky blue pink. Because every time I see that sky, I know he's smiling at me and it's a love letter from him. But there's also an example of the storm and the calm. What's in the middle of the storm and the calm? I saw one the other day when I was at the grocery store. It's a rainbow. And the rainbow is the most beautiful and transient thing that we could not capture if we wanted to. Once in a while we capture it on film, but we cannot hold that. But it's still beautiful. And it's perfect. And the list goes on. And the extreme list goes on. So there's black and white, white and dry, hot and cold. We have words to describe every point on each of these spectra. But here's the question. Why do we have words for all these points on the spectrum if they aren't important or good in some way or beautiful in some way that helps us learn? So if that's the case, how can we have polarity without a spectrum of grades between for anything? Human beings are certainly on a major spectrum with a lot of gray areas. There's lies and truth, good and evil, right and wrong. We try to categorize these, but by doing so, we often mess it up a lot. So in its ideal, I think, the Fellowship of Five, the way that I believe God designed it, is meant to embrace all the points on the spectrum. This means there's no one true level of ability or disability that makes us worthy. That's human society that says that. This means there is no God-designed ideal or physical perfection or anything that is truly considered an imperfection. Human society says that. We are all created in His image. And this holds true for gender and gender identity spectrum. There is not just a man and a woman. There cannot be just one perfect sexuality. God has us all here as perfect beings in perfection. The details to God, I don't think we matter beyond that. Human society wants to qualify it and make it an issue, but God wants us to rise above this mentality to see what He intended as perfection. In the other song that I chose for opening worship next to me, the songwriter goes into this idea and the comparisons of the broken me to the one who seems to have it all together. Although it's probably just meant as just illustrating a truly loving relationship that deserves some gratitude, I think it's also a love letter to God, and the song reads true in both interpretations. The songwriter views the caretaker of the God, if you will, in my interpretation, as the perfect Alpha and Omega, as being casual and confident, overlooking the mess I am, and always looking effortless. I know I sometimes feel that way about God and Jesus. It comes so easy to them, of course it would, but they can also overlook my mess. Thank goodness they can overlook my mess. What a relief that was when I learned that. Then in the song, we have the me, the five, which is a mess. Just a mess with health issues like stress lines and cigarettes, money ills like late bills and overages, societal ills like politics and deficits, emotional ills like screaming and hollering and being shouted on the ground, as well as the loss of innocence, feeling far from good, and feeling like a deck of cards, and your games of choice are dice and cards, the good and the bad. The song is also just a prayer of humanity to the perfect to be the stable guidepost of Alpha and Omega. With all these things about himself, the songwriter says, I've always let you down, and I know the stupid things I do, and yet, this you realize is about love, this God, that you still want me, and I still find you here next to me. No matter how much we mess up, He still wants us. If that's not reflecting the love of the Alpha and Omega for the messed up Fellowship of Five, I'm not sure what is. So the writer finishes the song song, the gospel like praiseworthy hymn on his name, saying, "Thank you for taking a chance on me. I know it isn't easy, but I hope to be worth it." In my mind, that's a direct prayer to God, and I think, honestly, I'm planning on saying it every day, and I think a lot of people might think about doing that as well, because God doesn't have to love us, and yet He does love us. Of course, when we compare ourselves in the five to Alpha and Omega, naturally we feel less and fall short, and we feel not as perfect as we should be, but that doesn't make us bad or less than anything. It makes us human. And life is five. It's about the human journey. There's relationship in the five, beauty in the five, love, development, and achievements. But there's also struggle in the five. There's doubt, imperfection, chaos, and negativity. But God and Jesus know this, and they love us anyway. So we are not the beginning or the end, but we are an essential component. Just like in my college organization, when everything fell apart, when we didn't have leadership, fellowship, and service in everything we did, without the humanity and the five of life, I don't think any of this would work either. We need God, the Alpha and the Omega, or God, the Alpha, Jesus, the Omega, and we need each other in the five. And we all need to realize and understand that we are most definitely loved, and we are most definitely worth it.